what was the movement to get us off the gold standard? Why? And what president finally did that? And what was his justification?
Well, the first major move was actually done by FDR. And essentially the reason for that was because FDR wanted to spend a tremendous amount of money that the government didn't have. Well, there are only essentially two ways to accomplish that. One is to take that money via taxes or via borrowing. But even in the case of borrowing, all you're really doing is taking it from people in the form of government bonds that you just have to repay in the future. But the second option, which was far more attractive, was just to counterfeit the money for it. And that's precisely what they did. They closed the gold window temporarily and then reopened it. And they had a completely different price for an ounce of gold in terms of dollars. So essentially what they had was a massive, instantaneous devaluation of the dollar. And again, what that allowed FDR to do was to spend billions of dollars, essentially create them out of nothing. And that functioned as a massive tax on the American people. And again, that was a large contributor to why the Depression lasted as long as it did. If you look at what's going on today in the economy, imagine if Congress and the president levied a $6 or $8 trillion tax on the American people. What would the effect be on the economy? We would see GDP contracting. Well, lo and behold, it's exactly what we're seeing right now. Why? Because inflation is a hidden tax. And we are seeing inflation in the order of $6 or $8 trillion right now.
Of course. Here's my last question for you, EJ, because we have a ton to do here. But this is the big picture, the big question I have. You have these brilliant minds at the Fed. Jerome Powell. We're going to talk about Janet Yellen later. You have buildings, huge buildings full of brilliant economists and all that. And they're like, oh, we don't think inflation will happen. And they're like, oh, and we talked in the first segment about how we spent more on COVID relief, $5.2 trillion than World War II. And then all the wars we fought since 2001 combined, right? World War II is 4.7, and then, right? And we spent 5.2, and then you put quantitative easing and all these other things that we're spending $13 trillion. And still these brilliant minds are like, we didn't see it coming. We didn't see inflation. How could someone get it? And like, it's unbelievable how they could miss it when any fool could see that this is what the result would be. What's your answer to that? What are we supposed to do with these people who shouldn't be getting it this wrong, you would think?
Well, I suppose Occam's razor tells us that these people just actually aren't that brilliant at all, right? I mean, perhaps they simply overthought it. You know, perhaps they out of hubris decided that they knew better and that somehow they would be the ones to figure out a way around these basic laws of nature. But the fact of the matter is, when you create more of something, you diminish its scarcity and therefore you diminish its price. In other words, you're decreasing the value of the dollar. At the end of the day, there is no amount of magic you can work that will ever change these basic laws of economics and these basic truths.
Even if you call it modern monetary theory, you give it a nice new fancy name?
Yes, it's amazing. There's really nothing modern about it. And I can say that because FDR's own Treasury Secretary actually advocated for precisely the policies that we've seen today out of the federal government and out of the Federal Reserve. And it had the exact same effect then as it's having today. There's really nothing modern about it, and it's not a theory. We've seen it in practice.
Like about 30 seconds. Could we ever go back? If wiser minds prevail, could we ever go back to a gold standard, or is that ship sailed?
No, I suppose anything's possible. Unfortunately, I have my doubts. The system is so well entrenched right now. Yeah. But I mean, if the presidency of an Atlantic City casino owner taught us anything, it's that a lot is possible, much more than we might imagine to be.
Subscribe to The First TV today for instant access to exclusive specials and content you actually want to watch. Your support helps The First TV fuel the fight against those seeking to destroy our right to free speech. Simply visit thefirsttv.com/support to join the fight today.